You know, about 62 AD, when my kids think I went to high school, yeah, probably your kids the same. Paul had an encounter in Colossia with a group of believers that so moved him. Have you ever walked into a group of believers and you will never forget them the rest of your life? They came at a special time and you came at a special time, and together you saw God use you. And so he wrote the book of Colossians, which we love. And in the early part of Colossians, Paul writes and talks really about belief. We might call it doctrine, or just a biblical truth by which we believe, the foundation of our faith. But it's not enough for you and I to just know doctrine, the 16 fundamentals, so we can pass the test. But how does it affect our behavior? How do we live that out? And so in Colossians, you'll find some great foundational truths that underscore who we are and what we believe, but then the practical application of how we live it out. It's so very, very important. And when he comes to the end of this brief but powerful epistle, this letter, he says, devote yourself to prayer, being watchful and thankful, and pray for us too, that God may open a door for our message, so that we may proclaim the mystery of Christ, for which I'm in chains. Pray that I may proclaim it clearly as I should. Be wise in the way you act towards outsiders. Make the most of every opportunity. Let your conversation be always full of grace, seasoned with salt, so that you may know how to answer everyone. I think the Lord gives us words to keep us focused. Back in the day, I used to little phrases like, things that rhymed so that it made me feel good about myself. The best is yet ahead for you in 1992, that kind of stuff. And get up and preach a sermon on the best is yet for you in 1992. But as cheesy as that was, the Lord led me to a maturity and said, I'm just going to give you a word. And that one word would be a motivation as well as a focus for me, and that word is opportunity. So back in 2019, the Lord dropped into my heart that in 2021, kind of as a prophetic word for me personally and for the network, this is going to be the year of opportunity. We were in the year of dream last year, and it turned into a nightmare, right? I've thought about how I've changed and what has happened to me in the last year, and I felt prompted because I didn't speak last night in a full sermon, and that's maybe why I kept singing a song over and over again, but get my sermon out. You ought to have been in the car on the way home. You ought to have heard what my daughter said to me afterwards. So encouraging. So encouraging. Where was I? Opportunity. Little did I know that 2021 would be an opportunity. So I felt rather than speaking to you, I should ask some of the champions that sit amongst you today to come up and share. And I'm going to ask them to come up now if they will. And we're going to have a conversation. And I believe that in this conversation, these who are sharing with us today, I loved what Lee McLeod said in the gathering we had in the first session. We're not experts, but we have had experience. Your life and my life, every one of us, have been touched by people who have maybe not been experts, but have had experience. You, I'm looking at you, have changed my life. I've watched the way you've operated and ministered. I've been in many of your churches. I've had dinners and lunches with you. We've had conversations on the phone. We've had stand-up conversations. There have been moments when some of us have wept together. Some of us have laughed together. Some of us have said to God, you've got to be kidding. But here we are, and I'm a product of you speaking into my life and me speaking into yours. So I asked these wonderful pastors if they would come up and let me ask them some questions about the last year of their lives and what they foresee in their settings. We looked across the state and tried to bring someone from each part of the state. One other that was going to join us from the coast had to bow out just the last few days because of illness, but I'm just grateful for each of them. So let me just kind of introduce them to you, and then I'm going to ask them a question. Each of them have a mic, and the rules are this, that we have about 40 minutes to talk, and if someone says something and they feel prompted to say something in addition, they can step in and say something. If one of these guys starts going on and on and on and somebody wants to cut them off, feel free. All right, so this is the rules, okay? So sitting next to me is Bruce Stefanik. He pastors Church on the Hill. Let's give it up for Bruce today. Church on the Hill with 2 campuses, one in Turner and one in Kaiser. And he has a story to tell, that's for sure. Then we have Jason, who is here, Noble, from Hope City Church. We just saw you on the big screen, Jason. He's the pastor behind Breakthrough movie and just released another work that he's been working on. Brand new pastor, planted a church in the midst of COVID, which is amazing. Next is Mark Robinson from Hope Church, 2 campuses, Albany, Sweet Home. I confirmed him on March the 8th. He was all excited. They shut the church down the next day. So, way to go. Then we have Brad Phillips. Well, Brad's at the end, sorry. I'll go back to Jeff Kirkland. Jeff Kirkland, who pastors here at Family Life Church, West Salem, and also launched a church during COVID in South Salem. Amazing. Now, Brad, my good friend Brad, from Harvest Church in Baker City, clear over the Far East. Takes him about 3 days to get here by wagon. Gentlemen, the first question, thank you for all being willing to be up here and just share your heart. And I'll start with you, Brad. How has the last year changed you? What did you discover about yourself?
Like me, everybody else has a lot of opinions. That's what I discovered.
Jeff, when I think about this last year in the midst of all, thanks, Brad. I want to come back to Brad for a minute. Everybody has lots of opinions. How did you navigate the everybody has lots of opinions from shutdown to stay open, masks, no masks, Democrat, Republican, cowboy, a city guy, all in Baker City? Tell me about that.
I think we had to, at some point, decide to set a course and to trust God and just go no matter all of the opinions. So,
yeah. Had you been already doing online ministry?
If you could call what we were doing that, yes. Yes. We did have an online presence, yeah.
Jeff, what did you discover about yourself? I mean, you were just rolling and moving fast, and God was blessing. The church was jam-packed, going to 2 services, thinking about a third. What did you discover about yourself?
I think I discovered that I was too good at programming ministry, and I didn't know my neighbor well enough. I think this last year has taught us to do a lot of unlearning, and I think what I learned was I knew too much of what I didn't need to know.
Yeah. You know, in the midst of pandemic, we had race issues, we had riots, we had the forest fires and all. You did a fabulous job about rethinking how you were going to address the race issue in your church, which is predominantly in where you're located is more of a Anglo white community. But tell us a little bit about how that all happened and what your goal was in that setting.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up living across the country and really grew up in Memphis, Tennessee, which is a little bit more diverse than Salem, Oregon. And So I had friends from the South. I often preach for a friend who pastors in the inner city of Atlanta, and I'm the whitest person in skin color and rhythm for miles when I'm there. And so I invited him and some others to join us, and we just had a conversation. I think another thing that we learned through that, and in the last year, or I learned even about myself, was that oftentimes myself and the church, we talk too much and we don't listen enough.
Wow. Mark, it was a good start to being the lead pastor of a local church. Shut you down the next Sunday. What surprised you most? What has really surprised you as a lead pastor in the last year?
So I'm going to say probably the strength of people's opinions has been pretty surprising, and it's been very polarizing, right? Realizing pretty early on that there was really nothing you could do, a decision you could make, and then everyone's going to be okay with it. There was always going to be a segment of people that were pretty not happy, and then they were going to be very vocal about it. Some voting with their feet and not being so vocal, but others voting with their feet and just having to be okay with that, of just doing the best thing that you knew to do for the church and leading strong in that.
Okay, so I'm at the service. It was the most powerful service the church had had for a long time, right?
That's what they said. Revival broke out. Yeah, March 8th.
So I think we did. Did we do 3 services that
Yep.
morning? Yeah, three services, and we went through the process of commissioning you and all that kind of thing. So all of this changed so quickly. The pandemic and then the restrictions that were put on. All of us faced all the. What was the first big decision you had to make as now the lead pastor of Hope Church?
So that was March 8th, and on Thursday we had one of our staff persons have a COVID scare in the middle of the afternoon, so we immediately had to shut down the campus, and then we didn't have weekend gatherings on the 15th. So really, the gathering you were with us was the last time we met until the first Sunday in June. And so that was more just a matter of just doing the right thing. That was the right thing to do, knowing what we knew. That staff person ended up getting very sick, and her spouse, and was hospitalized and recovered. But that was pretty scary, and we just had to make a quick decision in a matter of moments. Called the staff in. That was like 3 o'clock. Said, see everyone that's on campus at 3:30. Go home and quarantine. And so we all had to do a volunteer quarantine. So, yeah, the decisions got hard fast.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Jason, what were you thinking?
That's a good question. That's a good question. I mean, but I will tell you the word for us this year was opportunity also. And so we weren't even, I mean, we had a whole 9-month plan, 10-month plan, and God just threw it out the window. I mean, we had a building that we were remodeling, we were building a team, all of that stuff was happening, and God just said, back in Easter last year in April when it kind of started to first hit, he's like, you don't need a building. Just open up your parking lot. Let's do communion on Easter, because churches were closing down en masse, and we're like, hey, we're going to open our parking lot. We're crazy. We're a church plant. It's all good. And we did it, and we had 150 people show up on the parking lot of a church that had 5 people when it closed. I mean, and we're just like, okay, this is going to be great. And we just started doing once a month out in the parking lot. I have an incredible team, my wife and my daughter and Cherie. They're such a great team, and they're behind us. But that word was opportunity, and we just took it. And so September 13th, when we opened, the week before, I'm like, God, are you sure you want us to do this? I mean, honestly. And he said, you open. And we have not closed our doors since. We've been open every Sunday. 137 people have given their hearts to the Lord during this time. And, I mean, we just give all glory to God for that.
Yeah.
And we just said, we're not closing. They can take me to jail. And that's not the right decision for everybody. But we're like, hey, we're crazy. It's a church plant. And we're just staying open. And we did. And, I go back to your word for 2020. I don't think it was a nightmare. I think it was a moment where God gave us laser light focus to see the dream. Yeah. And so I'm just saying, I think that was a great word.
Thank you. I thank you. Whenever I get discouraged, I'm calling you up.
Call me.
I agree. That's amazing. Bruce, you were rolling as well. God was blessing you. Just finished a brand new building on your campus. You had years ago partnered with the Organ Ministry Network, took over an old facility, and it was hopping with young adults. I'd never been to a church where most of the people I looked out there looked old enough to be my grandkids. I mean, it was just terrific, and everything was Tell me how this last year has impacted you personally, and how has it changed the way you pastor?
Yeah, I kind of agree with Brad that I had to come to grips with not everybody's going to like me. You know, for pastors, that's tough. I was in a meeting with a group of pastors here in the city from different denominations, and one of my good friends, he pastors outward downtown, he said, I never realized how much ego was tied up in my preaching until I was just in front of a camera, and there was no audience. And I could really relate to that, But I think for me, that realization of we've got to lead, and somebody's not going to like it. They're going to either say you're a fundamentalist or you're a communist. But we had to make some decisions, and we knew that that it wasn't gonna make everybody happy. But the other thing I've seen is that there's been a shaking. People that you thought had more character, it kind of showed up that maybe not, and even not just their character, but their theology. That's been the shocking thing for us, is to see how superficial or how mixed up people's theology was with their own nationalism. And I love our country, but there's a big difference between nationalism and patriotism. And we had to address that. And that wasn't popular, still isn't. But I think for just that having to lead. So yeah, we came out of a huge building program, a K through 12 school, and we were up and running 1 month. We dedicated the building the 20th of January and closed it in March. But it's crazy. We built this building. It was a 3-year project, and 15,000 square feet. It's all of a high school. And I thought to myself, man, that's a big building. Are we going to be able to fill this thing? And so as of last week, we have 300 families on a waiting list to get into the school. And I think that's, talking about opportunity, that's our greatest opportunity right now is I think the education system is in a real state of crisis right now, and whatever we can do to reach kids. So we made some decisions to keep our school open, got a lot of flack, ended up closing one of our campuses because of it, because of government regulations. But so, yeah, it's been a bumpy ride.
Wow. I'm just going to open up. I'll just throw a question out. Anybody can answer and respond from your perspective. I guess one of the things as communicators, we're all trained to be communicators, and each of you are extraordinary communicators. I've heard all of you, and you're extraordinary. You each have your own style, but you're extraordinary. So the question would be, how do you feel communicating to people today is different, or how have you adjusted in your communication style, if at all, in the last year compared to maybe how you were a couple of years ago? Obviously, you're probably deeper and much more experienced, but how have you adjusted in light of where we are as a culture, and especially with the younger, limited attention spans with online and in-person services? So I just throw that out. Whoever wants to jump on it.
I'll go ahead and grab a couple of things on that point. We early on adopted the online strategy like a lot of people. We were already doing online, and then we just had decided to expand it, and then COVID hit, and so we were positioned well, or quickly became positioned well. But we always knew there was going to be a pretty significant online audience, and so that always factors now into my preparation that I'm going to be speaking to people who maybe are not yet followers of Jesus. So whatever I'm speaking has to relate to their lives. It has to be content, there has to be substance, but it has to be relevant to their lives. And then we kind of entered 2020 and then continued this once COVID hit. Really every weekend, depending on it doesn't really matter who's teaching that weekend, we are very gospel focused, gospel centered, and we call people to follow Jesus. We always give an invitation. We pre-COVID hadn't always done that. But during COVID, and we continue it to this day, we always invite people to follow Jesus, and the Lord's honored that. And I preach a little shorter now. We actually do try to...
Say shorter?
Shorter, yeah. Probably go maybe about 35 minutes. and at least aim for that versus 45 minutes maybe pre-COVID, just because, like you said, attention spans are shorter and so on.
All right.
So
That's
yeah.
an answer to Joy's prayers, by the
Yeah,
way.
exactly.
You know, I'd like to comment on that. I think if you've been involved in missions at all, there's a difference between form and meaning, you know, and staying true to the Word of God, but knowing that I have to change the way I'm doing it for my audience. And for me to just be stubborn and dig in and say, well, we're not going to change is foolish. So the online thing was us. We sort of were doing online as well. And honestly, I kind of tolerated it because I was like, well, you know, but I'd rather do live. But fortunately, I had a guy that pushed us. And but now we've come to realize, man, our front door is a lot farther away than our property. And so I'm sure, like you guys, we have people that will show up, introduce themselves. Hi, I'm Joe. I'm visiting today. And I'll say, oh, are you visiting? They said, no, I've been coming here for 6-7 months. And I'd never seen them. Of course, that's their first time physically, but they've been watching us online, attending, considering themselves members online, and they come for the very first time. And so we've really had to wrap our mind and think missional about that. What does that look like from out there? What do we look like from out there? Not just those who love us, but what does that front door person look like?
Yeah, we actually had to almost think of redecorating our front door because we recognize that more people see us than we see them. And so I resonate with what you said earlier, Bruce, like ego-wise, all of a sudden you're looking into a camera rather than a face, and we're thinking, does this matter? But the reality is it matters. We were just talking, we've, in the last like 4 or 5 weeks, worn out a baptismal tank. And so people were seeing us, and we didn't even know it, and then they're showing up. My wife says hi to somebody, oh, it's your first time, same thing, and they said, oh, no, Pastor Kim, we know you. That's creepy.
Feels creepy.
Yeah. And you know, what do you know about me? But people are watching us, but we can't see them. So it caused us to redecorate our front door and really dive all in and recognize that the changes that we've experienced now in the first 2 months we thought were temporary, but they're here to stay. And we have to be relatable in those scenarios because anybody can use YouTube, but how can we connect on a relational level? And it's really caused us to redesign.
One of what Pastor Mark said, and I completely agree, you can go to churches that never give an altar call for salvation. And I think every time we open our doors, that's what we've done. We've got to give people an opportunity. And the idea that they may not be here next week, I mean, that's real. And, you know, I mean, they can go for weeks and not hear an opportunity to give their life. So for us, we say no matter what we're speaking on, no matter what we're talking about, anytime our doors are open, even if we do an event like we did a movie night, we give a call for salvation. Because I just feel like, man, anytime we have an opportunity for people to be in our building and hear the gospel, that is key for us. We're like, man, and we're seeing God just bring people out of the woodwork. I mean, 32 on Easter Sunday morning, you know, and it's just because we gave an opportunity. The other thing we've done too is we're really leaning into team teaching. So it's not just one voice, but it's multiple voices, and I think that really has been such a powerful and multiple different from men and women, and you know, our team. We all share the platform, and I think it's powerful.
I would just add one more thing that we really learned, and I think it's a fear of a pastor, is just because we don't see them doesn't mean they don't participate in worship through giving. If we give the right platforms and the right explanation, just because they're not in a pew doesn't mean they won't worship through giving.
I think one of the big things for us, or myself personally, was realizing biblical relevance in cultural chaos. I think that bedrock was really important, that the Bible does have something to say, and it is relevant to what's happening right now.
You know, I would say one of the greatest opportunities we have right now is youth ministries. The kids, man, the high school and the middle school kids are just upside down with stress and suicide and depression and cynicism. Our youth ministries has just been off the charts, and the things we've seen happen. We've had more baptisms among our youth and by far than our adults, because kids are just hungry for someone to talk to me about hope. And boy, if I was one thing I would leave, it's the opportunity right now with youth ministries.
Let me just add one other thing, just talking about the youth. So we're watching something, and we're right now having conversations about how to lean into it more with just a real cool thing happening with our young adults. We don't have as many as they have at Church on the Hill because I attended there for a number of years and was a member, and that's phenomenal. But there's young adults coming, and sometimes they come in a group of 5 or 6. Sometimes it's just one coming on their own, coming into a Sunday morning gathering. They've not yet connected with our Thursday night young adult life, but it's noticeable right now, and it's been in the last couple of months. Our Thursday night group is growing wonderfully and so on, but there's something very unique happening there. We're still trying to figure out exactly what that is, but we want to support it. And so I think it's just the younger generations see what's not working, and they're trying to find something that's working. And we know it's the gospel. It's Jesus that works. And so, yeah.
I was going to ask a question, but I don't think I'll ask it this. I was going to ask you, what did you give up and you're grateful for that you can let go of and just say, well, we're not going to do that anymore. Then I thought, well, Jason would say, I gave everything up and started over. So I guess the question would be, rather than what you gave up, what are you doing right now, that you didn't do a year ago? Obviously, Jason, we could spend quite a bit of time at church, right? But is there anything that you've added, you've included now? I mean, we talked a little bit about online, those kinds of things, but what do you feel like your team or your church or your focus is now that you've added that you weren't doing a year ago? We've all kind of said the online stuff, but maybe there's more to that. And I know, Jeff, you guys are actually raising up an online pastor. Talk to me, what is that?
Yeah, good question. If you could tweet your answer so we could figure it out, we would appreciate that. We were fortunate in the midst of COVID, as we were launching another campus, to talk to somebody from Nebraska who was interested in joining our team, but the timing wasn't right, and so we brought somebody on to handle our South Campus. And in the meantime, in the middle of COVID, Rob from Omaha, he called and he said, hey, my wife just got her dream job at Corbin. Can I still come be on your team? And I said, yeah, we don't have any money for you, but come on in. And he said, okay. And I was surprised that he said okay. So we had to prepare. But so he handles all of our online. He has a background in videography. So we changed our whole live stream look. So like when it's time to worship through giving, it's not people who are out in the computer world watching somebody on a platform. We actually have a pastor that talks to them specifically so that we can speak to the people in the auditorium specifically. At the end of a gathering, when we want to do an altar call in a gathering, it cuts to our online pastor who can walk the people through salvation online and connect with them and pray with them and build relationship there. And so it's caused us to evolve in that and multiple voices. So oftentimes during worship, it's not that I'm not participating, but I'll sit with the online and communicate to the people who are online so that I can have connection there also. So it's just taken that to another level because, and in fact, we had somebody show up one night and they introduced themselves to Pastor Rob and they go, oh yeah, we know you. They had really no idea who I was. I was like, I've been preaching, but And
people are disappointed when they meet me. You go, you look taller online.
Bruce and I are the only ones whose feet don't reach the ground here, but.
What's wrong with you guys? What happened?
I think for us, it was a choice to respond instead of react to the situation. And it was really simple. We like to eat. And so a lot of our response was around food. And we started a curbside meal for our community and where they can drive up and get a meal. And I think we've served since then over 12,000 meals. So just a simple outreach like that.
You know, I just been reflecting on your question, what did we have to give up? And you know what we had to give up was our right to do things that were comfortable for us. Yeah. I don't know if that makes sense, but we had to give up the right. As a staff, this was our biggest hurdle in the first few months because everybody had to lay down the right to do what was comfortable or do what we always do. And so like the online thing, we tolerated it, but we had to have a paradigm shift. And now we see the online as a campus, as a full-fledged campus with a hire and equipment and resourcing and financing. That wasn't comfortable for us. And some of my staff weren't comfortable in some of the shifts. We lost some, but we gained some really amazing people. But that idea of giving up, is this really just about me, or is this about reaching, our community? And so we had to give up a paradigm, and that's been an ongoing journey.
I just real quick, it kind of comes back to what I said earlier, but one of the things that we really had to adapt to outside of online was just giving up what we knew. We knew too much about church. We knew too much of what was inside four walls, and we had to change the way, literally unlearn how we think, so we could relearn how we need to think. We had to stop talking and start acting and listening, and we learned that culture literally tells us how to reach them. But we've been busy trying to tell them how they should be reached. And so we had to shift what we knew so that we could know what they need to know. And it was a big shift for us.
Wow, and we just got a few more minutes here, and what I want to throw out there, I want to ask Jason a question or two, but about church planting in just a moment. But I'd like us just to say, be prepared to kind of say what you are looking forward to, how you see being a pastor in 2021, and where are we going as a church? From your perspective, if you were the guest speaker for this session, standing up here by yourself, what would be your message to your brothers and sisters out here about the future? So you can all be thinking about that. But Jason, you're a church planter. How does a church plant? You pastored a church that was already established before. So
Two.
So you've had experience of both. How does a church planter view moments like this versus somebody who's in an established church that's been maybe around for 50 years?
I mean, for us, because I have been in both worlds, it has been like church planting at this moment might seem like it's hard, but it has been so awesome because we have no set history. We have no, so we're able to just take care of the opportunities, and just as they come, we just take them. But I would say one difference between established and now is we've really streamlined too how we do it. I mean, where you really have to look and say, okay, what's important, what's going to reach people. When you take an established church, you've got programs that are legacy programs that have been there forever. Well, starting from scratch, the other thing you have to we realize is, okay, there's nobody to blame for the culture except for us. So if it gets messed up, it's our fault. And so we're really looking at that. But I would say, and this is a little bit off the question, but I would say the support we've gotten from other churches, Pastor Mark, what you guys did for us was such an incredible blessing. Pastor Lee from the district, we couldn't have done this without the other churches that have partnered with us. And you realize really quickly, because you're building a team, you don't have the resources, walking into that resource has been an incredible blessing. Thank you. It has been a huge blessing for us. And if we can build a church that's as forth, as generous as Hope, I'll be super happy. I mean, honestly.
Wow. We'll get a report later today in our business celebration with regards to how the network pulled together. But I just want you to know how much we appreciate each of you and your contribution in these challenging times and modeling for us, because we're all looking like, okay, and I've seen you all online, I've watched all of you, and I just thank God. You're each different in your style, but I thank the Lord for how He has used you in these unique times and modeled for us. And I know you make yourself available to anybody in this room if you want to take a side conversation or a coffee, or they want to take you to the finest restaurant in Baker City or whatever. They would be more than happy to share their lives with you and we haven't arrived yet. So that leads me to the final question today. I did have another question real quick about giving, because all of a sudden I'm going into churches, and I used to make a big deal about worshiping and giving. And many churches are not making even any comments about it because they have a box in the back or give online. So has giving gone down?
So for us, last
Giving's
month,
gone up for you.
yeah, but I mean, like, so last month God challenged me, challenge your people to give on their stimulus. And I did. I just went right to our people. When we talk about giving, I always say, listen, we're not talking about, we want God to be able to bless you. So we're not afraid to talk about money because we feel like from that perspective, and literally we had the largest month since we started. People stepped out and they tithed on there. It was double anything we've ever, any month. And so I think those are the opportunities that we can lean into and not be afraid to say, listen, like, trust God in your giving. Give on your stimulus, because you hear people say, well, I'd love to give, but I can't fit it in my budget. Well, here they are, all getting checks that they weren't expecting. And we just called it right from the platform. We said, hey, you know what? We're going to call you to giving. And they stepped up like never before. I mean, blew me away.
We've been in the same scenario. In COVID, the week before the shutdown, we bought a car for the local Dream Center. I of great faith, thought we were nuts. Because I wasn't sure what was going to happen. And we had the greatest financial year in the history of the church. 4 weeks ago, our church, we do a big birthday party. Our church gave $30,000 to buy groceries for our community. We bought bins for kids to go back to school. It's been unbelievable. But we just make it's a part of our worship. It's a part of our culture. One of our core values is generosity. We model it. And we haven't seen a drop. In fact, last month was, just like you guys, the highest. Not only did we give $30,000 extra, but it was the highest tithe month we've ever had in the history of the church. So it makes board meetings shorter.
Amen, yeah.
Brother Brad, you're on stage right there. You want to say one thing to your brothers and sisters about the future?
Rapture. That's what I'd say. Come quickly, Lord Jesus. I think I would say, what if 2021 is worse than 2020? I would say, what if it doesn't go back to normal? What if that's not God's plan and His desire and His purpose, but for something greater in our hearts, and maybe the place of need is where we need to go?
You know, I had the exact same thought. The comfort side of me would love to go back to normal, whatever that was, right? But what if 2020 was just a warning shot across the bow to wake us up, and to have this paradigm shift, to have a missional shift, and church becomes a different thing for us than it has been. And one of the greatest opportunities, I think, is this emerging generation, because I think the younger generation has looked at church and go, I don't know if there's a place for me unless I'm a professional. But I just think there's a whole crop coming up that see this unsettled landscape we're living in, and they're ready for a challenge. They're ready for a challenge. They're ready to be invited in. Mentoring, leadership development, I think, is our greatest opportunity and will be our greatest challenge. What's discipleship going to look like over the next few years? And so, yeah, leadership development.
Shine bright. Make your church shine so bright in your community. I know we live in Oregon and it's a tough place, but I'm going to tell you, if we shine bright, there's so many lost people looking and who are broken and who are hurt and who are addicted, and you reach them and they're going to come flying in your doors. Shine bright. The darkness is great, but that means we get to shine brighter.
And I guess I would just add that wanted to be able to get this in today, so I'm glad I can, because about opportunity. Really early on in COVID, I really felt like the Lord just showed me Ephesians 5:16 in a different way, to make the most of every opportunity, because these are evil days. Depending on the translation, these days are evil. Everybody knows what the evil is. And we need to turn away from the evil, stop focusing on that, and turn to the opportunity, because there's so many opportunities. So many opportunities, and I probably right now, I'm pretty confident of this, that I'm more convinced that God has prepared me and as well you for this moment, but it doesn't mean it's going to be easy. I mean, I concur. I think it could be really hard and amazing at the same time. And so we talk about those things, but there's opportunities everywhere. And thankfully, God's giving us some of those, and we know there are more to come. And, we want to be passionate about reaching people and helping people connect with Jesus and do that creatively. And we're looking at how many ways we can do that. How many different ways can we do that? So, there are opportunities, but we have to look for them. And if we're so focused on evil, and that's all people are looking at sometimes, we're going to miss them. And I don't want to miss any of them.
Good word. Good word.
Well, I'm going last, and there's 5 minutes, so are you ready? Now, a couple of thoughts that I would share, and maybe it's just for me, so I'll just share it for myself out loud. The first one would be this: be very careful not to let other churches' problems become our platform for promotion. Let's not stand on others' decisions, judge others' decisions. That's not our job. People is our job. The other thought would be unlearn programs. We have to be people focused. Because in the middle of a pandemic, if you're program driven, it causes panic. But if you're people oriented, it creates opportunity. And so I think that it's going to be a time and a season. I don't think we'll ever go back to what it was, and I'm good with that. I'm actually happy about that. We don't have to have bad coffee in the lobby anymore, or day-old donuts, or whatever you do. We don't have to do that anymore. And if somebody shows up and asks where it went, you can say, we got rid of that a year ago. Where have you been? And in pastoral love. But we have a new season, and everybody can do things different, but don't say, well, they're doing it wrong, so I'm going to tell everybody they're doing it wrong and use that as a platform to build what you're trying to do that you think is right. And just make sure we are people focused.
Let's thank these champions this morning for sharing with us, guys. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.